What's up YouTube? This is my Ice Shot Amazon build. Super tanky, super fun, able to clear everything in the game. Honestly, it, let's get to the showcase. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the showcase. Let's hop straight into how the build works and how it plays. The core damage skill we use is Ice Shot. We're combining Ice Shot with the unique quiver, Kadiro's Gambit. Kadiro's provides great AoE damage without having to use a support gem like Nova Projectiles or Fork, so it frees up a support gem spot. For tougher content like bosses or Abyss monsters, we cast Tornado Shot on ourselves, followed by Ice-Tipped Arrows and Barrage. After we have these two buffs of Ice-Tipped Arrows and Barrage, we continue to spam Ice Shot and everything will freeze and die. Additionally, if we are fighting a boss, we use Freezing Mark before using any of these other skills. For survivability, we are using the Essentia Sanguis unique gloves along with the Ascendancy passive Mystic Harvest. This synergy makes it to where our elemental damage from Ice Shot will leech Energy Shield. This combination pretty much makes us invincible as you only need to have one piece of gear with the leech life modifier, and as long as you are doing damage, your Energy Shield will always be maxed out. Basically, you just have to avoid one-shots from bosses and you are pretty much immortal. Bosses and tougher monsters also get frozen pretty quick, so you kinda have to be trying to die or just not giving a f. I have recently moved and been playing with a lot of lag, so that was a main concern when creating this build, as my Wi-Fi can cause me to lose several seconds of times and I was dying. This solved that problem and I no longer die. We're going to go over some more build synergies when we go over the skills as well as the gear, but for now, here is an example of a play-by-play on Zesht. Since I know Zesht is about to spawn, I'm going to cast Tornado Shot first. You'll notice now that I use Ice-Tipped Arrows and Barrage in quick succession after Tornado Shot because we do not want Tornado Shot to use these buffs. Once I cast these two buffs, the first thing I do is apply Freezing Mark. Once Freezing Mark is on the boss, I spam Ice Shot. Since Zesh is a larger health pool boss, I reapply both Barrage and Ice-Tipped Arrows one time and then continue to spam Ice Shot until he is dead. For mapping, you can basically just use Ice Shot and kill everything, but for tougher monsters or if you decide to use a more budget version, you will use Tornado Shot as needed along with Ice-Tipped Arrows and Barrage whenever you just need to burst a stronger monster down. I typically like to use Tornado Shot preemptively when I know an Abyss monster is spawning, and then I use Barrage and Ice-Tipped Arrows to burst those monsters down because they can be super tanky. I am going to run some background footage while we go over the skills to give you an idea of mapping with the build, as these are tier 15 Abyssal Overrun maps using the Unforeseen Consequences unique tablet, along with an Abyss tablet having the modifier of increased difficulty for each Abyss closed, and Delirium to increase monster toughness. So these are the most juiced maps that you can basically get, so you can see that the build is insanely strong and I still have tons of gear upgrades to make. Now, let's talk about the skills. Please note that I am running one unset ring to give me an additional skill slot. I will tell you which skill is optional, just wanted to make you aware though if you want to mimic my exact build. Before we get into the support gems, I'm going to explain the spirit setup and how we are snapshotting certain spirit skills to specific weapon sets. To mimic my exact build, you will need 100 spirit from your gear. However, you can get away with much less if you are on a budget, and I will explain ways with passives while barely losing damage. So we are using Roa, because who doesn't love dinosaurs? We are also using Wind Dancer, Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, and Elemental Conflux. Herald of Ice and Roa are used in both weapon sets. However, Herald of Thunder, Elemental Conflux, and Wind Dancer are being snapshot on different weapon sets. Wind Dancer and Herald of Thunder are in their own weapon set. It can be weapon set 1 or 2 as we are not doing anything fancy with our passives. Wind Dancer and Herald of Thunder are active on our weapon set with the Kadiro's Gambit unique quiver. This is the weapon set we use for general clearing. Our other weapon set has Elemental Conflux active while Herald of Thunder and Wind Dancer are not active. This allows me to use a better single target DPS rare quiver and kill bosses faster. Please note that Elemental Conflux is our completely optional skill. As I will repeat again, I am running an unset ring. You can completely slate Elemental Conflux and run all spirit skills on both weapon sets if you like as well. Alright, support gems. I will state which are optional and other recommended support gems that may work better depending on the gear you can afford, but let's get into it. Pretty standard setup for Roa. We're using Loyalty, Minion Mastery, Diala's Desire, Precision 2, and Brutus Brain. Diala's Desire and Precision 2 are completely optional as they just save me some passive points by lowering the spirit requirement, and Precision 2 just gives me a damage increase because it gives us more accuracy since we're on Amazon. However, if you cannot afford it, these are completely optional and you can slate these and just use these other 3. Herald of Ice is also a pretty standard setup as we are buffing AoE damage with Elemental Armaments, Cold Mastery, Elemental Focus, Magnified Area 2, and then our actual tech that we are using is Oisin's Oath. Oisin's Oath really helps with mana sustain for general clear as it allows all damage from Herald of Ice to leech mana since we are running a ring with the leech mana modifier. Ice Shot. We are using Rakiata's Flow. This is the last lineage gem that I am using and I do highly recommend it on this build. Luckily I got one while farming maps, so make sure you're target farming those Jaded Isle maps. If you can't afford it, use Cold Penetration in place of it. The 2 that I highly recommend are Ice Bite 2 and Minion Pact 2. The other ones are Overextend and Elemental Armaments, but you can try others that may work better for you depending on your gear. Wind Dancer and Herald of Thunder are pretty standard setups, running Maim, Elemental Focus, Magnified Area 2, Blind 2, and Close Combat 2. Herald of Thunder, we have Magnified Area 2, Elemental Focus, Elemental Armaments 2, Pinpoint Critical, and Lightning Mastery. Now for Freezing Mark, this skill does not activate as soon as you apply it. It activates as soon as the enemy is frozen, and we are using some really helpful support gems here. You could run a few things, but I found these supports to really help me while bossing. Charged Mark. This makes it where applying Freezing Mark will create shocked ground at the enemy's location. This helps with shocking the boss, which increases our damage even more. Eternal Mark makes it to where Freezing Mark will be active even after freezing the boss the first time. Efficiency and Mark of Siphoning really just help with mana cost, as mana can be rough when fighting a boss since we're not getting recover mana from kills and things like that. Mark for Death allows for Broken Armor, which can increase damage a little bit more, but you can definitely try a different support gem if you think something else will work better. Elemental Conflux. I've got Lightning Mastery, but you can run one of the Uhtred lineage gems if you have the currency, as they are best in slot. Again, this skill is completely optional and should only be ran if you are using an unset ring. Ice Tipped Arrows. Standard setup here to increase damage. So we've got Short Fuse 1, Magnified Area 2, Second Wind 3. This is the only required support gem as it gives us 2 separate cooldowns for this skill, which is great since we are not really using it too much other than for tougher monsters. And then we have Cold Penetration and Elemental Armaments 2. For Barrage, the supports mainly just focus on cooldown and cost. We've got Cooldown Recovery 2, Prolonged Duration, Rapid Casting 2, Second Wind 3, and Efficiency 2. Tornado Shot. Now Tornado Shot does do damage, but we are using it mainly as a buff for Ice Shot. Therefore, we are using Overabundance to create 2 tornadoes. Durability to allow it to be hit by ice shot more times. Concentrated area just to increase more damage. Rapid attacks, this is completely optional, I just like it. And then freeze. Freeze is great here as it helps freeze bosses. Once a boss is frozen, we pretty much kill them shortly after. I did want to make a quick note before we go into gear. Since I play on controller, I like to set Tornado Shot to cast on myself. To do this, you're just going to want to go to the skill bind screen. And then you're going to hold the button for skill options on Tornado Shot. And then you're just going to want to select the cast on self option. Equipment. There are two main ways you can go about defenses for your equipment. You can either go for full energy shield or a hybrid of evasion and energy shield. I am using a hybrid EV-ES setup. For uniques, we have Kadiro's Gambit in our weapon set for mapping. Mine is weapon set 1. You can use this in both weapon sets if you are in early maps and on a budget. Our other uniques are Essentia Sanguis and Headhunter. Essentia Sanguis is a must, as I have already noted that this gives us insane survivability with the Mystic Harvest passive, making our energy shield always be maxed out as long as we are doing damage. Headhunter is really good here as the extra attributes are nice, and I really like to farm Abyssal Overruns, but if you are not farming Abyssal Overruns, any belt will do, so you can try out other unique belts if you would like. Our other important unique is actually a Flask, Lavianja's Spirit. It is amazing as we are picking up the passive Crystal Elixir that increases our elemental damage while we have a Flask active. And since Lavianja's is always active, we always have that damage increase, so it's super strong. The Blood of the Warrior Life Flask is also best in slot here, but I barely ever click Life Flask on this build, but it does give a little bit of extra damage, so you can pick it up if you would like. For our body pieces, you'll want to get resist as you need them. If you do plan to go evasion energy shield hybrid, try to pick up some pieces with deflection on your chest or boots as it makes you even tankier, but it's not really needed. I do highly recommend the Sacrificial Regalia chest piece as it gives you the +1 for all of your skills, and since your skills should be always corrupted, with some even being double corrupted, it will increase your damage even more. You can go for either a combination of evasion and energy shield on this, or strictly energy shield. I'm not sure of the price of this as I picked this up early league, but it is super strong. A standard evasion energy shield or ES chest is just as sufficient. For our helmet, I am running an energy shield based helmet since I am using the Subterfuge Mask passive, which increases our evasion based off of our energy shield. I would get a helmet with critical hit chance if you can. As you can see, I still have the reduced attribute requirements, which is not ideal. Critical hit chance really will increase your damage even more. For boots, movement speed, resist, and if you can get deflection, that works, or more evasion or energy shield is the goal. For jewelry, you want one ring to have the Leech Life modifier and the other to have Leech Mana. The Leech Life modifier is absolutely essential in this build as it allows us to recover ES, not life, because of our unique gloves. The Leech Mana really helps with sustain. Flat damages are really good here with one increased cold damage not being bad. I do also want to state here that I am running a lot of rarity, but I sacrifice a lot of character power to get that rarity. However, this is not needed and I do not recommend if you are still starting in maps or learning the build. Flat damage rings such as adds lightning damage, fire damage, etc. can really boost your damage even more, especially with breach rings. Finally, for our amulet, you are looking for a spirit along with plus projectile skills. You can get a wide variety of good suffixes and I don't recommend managed regeneration like I have. It just happens to be what I got while crafting this amulet, but you can get things like critical hit chance, critical damage bonus. You can also get prefixes like increased maximum energy shield, evasion. All of these are very good. Now let's talk about my bow. I am running a physical bow, however an elemental bow is really good here, especially if you are on a budget. Prefixes like adds lightning, fire, cold are better than physical unless you have all three physical modifiers and they are very high rolled. So don't be afraid to pick up modifiers like adds lightning, adds fire, as they are super strong. For suffixes, you need the critical hit chance as crit is one of our main sources of damage, plus projectile or attack skills is great here. You're looking for the surpassing arrow as your additional suffix. You can see that I have the onslaught because it's easy to craft this way, but if you're able to get one with surpassing arrow, that is great. For our damage quiver, the standard god tier visceral quiver is the goal. You definitely want the crit chance implicit along with the crit chance on the actual quiver, crit damage along with +2 projectile skill, and more damage prefixes is what you want. These can get quite pricey. As you can see, mine is still not the absolute best, but it gets the job done. For charms, I am running 2 charms to prevent being frozen, as I noticed I was getting a frozen a lot while I used this build, and using these 2 frozen charms really solved that issue. However, feel free to try whichever you like. Additionally, I have a rite of passage, but this is only if you have the currency, and this is the absolute last thing you want to upgrade for yourself on your build. Spirit of Wolf is my favorite, but Owl and Cat are also very good here. Additionally, I want to include that I'm using the Sine Aequo unique gloves for bossing. This is especially used for pinnacle bossing, as it just does increase damage and it helps you hit their freeze caps, and which can be very difficult on pinnacle bosses. So make sure you're swapping to these when you are fighting pinnacle bosses like Zesht or King of the Mist. For my passives, I'm not going to go too in depth. I'm just going to hover through them and just talk about the essentials and some of the different options, as we have already gone over a lot of the main notables. We are not doing any sort of weapon set passives. For Ascendancy, we are using the Mystic Harvest passive, as this is what really makes the build special with the Life Leech and the Essentia Sanguis gloves. The other Ascendancy nodes that we're taking are just for damage. In general, we are mainly focusing on the crit nodes for damage. Spectral Ward and Subterfuge Mask are completely optional, and I would only use these if you are going for the Evasion Energy Shield setup like me. However, you can totally slate these and select more damage or more Energy Shield if you decide to go with a full Energy Shield setup. I also do want to state that I am running Chaos Inoculation here because I have a decent amount of energy shield already from my jewels and gear. However, if you are still in early maps, do not spec into Chaos Inoculation and just try to pick up chaos resistances as you can on your gear. However, Chaos Inoculation can be really strong here, and I would recommend picking it up if you have over 3k energy shield. Another main damage notable that we haven't talked about that I highly recommend is the Coming Calamity. This increases our cold damage while we have Herald of Ice active and is essential in our build, so you'll make sure you want to grab this notable. Another main option that I do not have allocated but have tested and used for pathing is the Easy Going notable. So this increases the reservation efficiency of our Roa mount, and this can really help you with your spirit requirements. So if you are on a budget and can't meet spirit requirements, you can use this Easy Going notable and path towards it to really save you some efficiency, as there's a lot of nodes that decrease the cost of it. You won't lose that much damage because if you take this path here and then grab the notable Inspiring Ally, you will still get some increased damage from those other passives. If you do decide to run the Easy Going passive, just make sure that you don't sacrifice any of your crit nodes. Sacrifice regular things like elemental damage or projectile damage, anything like that. Do not sacrifice your crit nodes though when trying to grab this notable. Now, let's run through my jewels. You'll want one time loss jewel for this area, as we have a lot of density around it for notables and small passives. You'll want it to have critical hit chance and damage bonus. A time loss emerald will also work here. This is just best in slot for giving me the increased maximum energy shield. I plan to make a jewel video in the coming week where you can make these jewels for less than 10 divs and sell them for tons of currency, or use them like me, so stay tuned for that video. For uniques, I am rocking a Heart of the Well diamond. You do not need to have the double gain extra, and I didn't have it in the showcase as I just found this and rolled these mods. You will want either a regular sapphire or your Heart of the Well diamond to have the recover mana on kill, as it is great for general clearing, but you're looking for gain extra damages, critical hit chance, movement speed. There's a wide variety of modifiers that work on the Heart of the Well diamond, but be sure to pick one of these up because they're super strong. For sapphires, you want critical hit chance, critical damage bonus, elemental damage, or increased cold damage, or maximum energy shield. These are really the only beneficial modifiers on sapphires, and you can see that I am rocking one here for the recovered percent of maximum mana on kill. Now the rest of my jewels are emeralds. There are plenty of great modifiers, and this is what I recommend on a budget. So you can pick up several different emeralds. You're looking for critical damage bonus with critical hit chance for attack, damage with bows. There's a huge wide variety variety of jewels that you can use. You can see that I have some movement speed, projectile damage. All of these are great, and I highly recommend emeralds when you're doing a build on a budget because it's not that much of a DPS loss. I am using sapphires as I run a lot of Sekimas and know how to craft these cheaply, and I want the additional maximum energy shield. However, emeralds are still really good, and you can just sacrifice a little bit of defenses for these offenses if you are on a budget. Alright, I'm going to do a quick scroll through of my character screen just so you can see my stats. However, if you made it this far, thanks for the support, and if you hit that like button, it really motivates me to continue making these videos. I will leave a link to my POE Ninja in the description. I do have a jewel video coming this week that can be great for profit crafting or boosting your character power and getting jewels like you saw in this video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to catch that video. But as always, stay safe, have fun, I'll catch you in the next one.